the latest on the Texas shooting with Monday's updates. Sutherland Springs, Tex. A gunman clad in all black with a ballistic vest strapped to his chest and a military-style rifle in his hands, opened fire on parishioners at a Sunday service at a small Baptist church in rural Texas, killing at least 26 people and turning this tiny town east of San Antonio into the scene of the country's newest mass horror. The gunman was identified by the Texas Department of Public Safety as Devin Patrick Kelly, 26. Mr. Kelly, who lived in New Braunfels, Texas, died shortly after the attack. He had served in the Air Force at a base in New Mexico but was court-martialed in 2012 on charges of assaulting his wife and child. He was sentenced to 12 months confinement and received a bad conduct discharge in 2014, according to Ann Stefanik, the chief of Air Force Media Operations. The motive for the attack was unclear on Sunday, but the grisly nature of it could not have been clearer. Families gathered in pews, clutching Bibles and praying to the Lord, were murdered in cold blood on the spot. Mr. Kelly started firing at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs not long after the Sunday morning service began at 11 a.m., officials said. He was armed with a Ruger military-style rifle, and within minutes, many of those inside the small church were either dead or wounded. The victims ranged in age from 5 to 72, and among the dead were several children, a pregnant woman and the pastor's 14-year-old daughter. It was the deadliest mass shooting in the state's history. At least 20 more were wounded. Investigators working at the scene of a mass shooting at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs on Sunday. Callie Richmond for the New York Times. It's something we all say does not happen in small communities, although we found out today it does, said Joe Tackett, the sheriff of Wilson County, which includes Sutherland Springs. Sheriff Tackett and other officials said the gunman first stopped at a gas station across Highway 87 from the church. He drove across the street, got out of his car and began firing from the outside, moving to the right side of the church, the authorities said. Then he entered the building and kept firing. The authorities received the first call about a gunman at about 11:20 a.m. Officials and witnesses said Mr. Kelly appeared to be prepared for an assault, with black tactical gear, multiple rounds of ammunition and a ballistic vest. He went there, he walked in, started shooting people and then took off, said Representative Henry Cuellar, a Texas congressman who represents the region and who was briefed by law enforcement officials. When Mr. Kelly emerged from the church, an armed neighbor exchanged gunfire with him, hitting Mr. Kelly, who fled in his vehicle. Neighbors apparently followed him, chasing him into the next county, Guadalupe County, where Mr. Kelly crashed his car. Mr. Kelly was found dead in his vehicle. Officials said it was unclear how Mr. Kelly had died. At the church, he left behind a scene of carnage. Of the 26 fatalities, 23 people were found dead inside the church, 2 were found outside, and 1 died later at a hospital. Speaking at a news conference in Japan, the first stop on his tour of Asia, President Trump called the shooting a mental health problem at the highest level and not a gun situation, adding the gunman was a very deranged individual. He also ordered flags flown at half-staff at the White House and all federal buildings through Thursday. In Floresville, Texas, hours after the attack, Scott Holcomb, 30, sat with his sister on the curb outside the emergency room at Connolly Memorial Medical Center. They were both in tears. The father, Brian Holcomb, had been guest preaching at the church, they said, and he and the mother, Carla Holcomb, were killed. "I'm dumbfounded," Mr. Holcomb said, also noting that his pregnant sister-in-law, Crystal Holcomb, had been killed. "This is unimaginable. My father was a good man, and he loved to preach. He had a good heart." His sister, Sarah Slavin, 33, added they weren't afraid of death. "They had a strong faith, so there's comfort in that. I feel like my parents, especially my mom, wasn't scared." A parishioner, Sandy Ward, said that her daughter-in-law and 3 of her children were shot. Her grandson, who is 5, was shot 4 times and remained in surgery Sunday night. She said she was awaiting word on her other family members. Ms. Ward said she did not attend services on Sunday because of her troubled knees and a bad hip. "I just started praying for everybody who was there when she learned of the shooting," she said. Texas Department of Public Safety troopers outside the First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs, where at least 26 people were killed on Sunday. Tomás González, European Press Photo Agency, at a news conference on Sunday. Gov. Greg Abbott said that he and other Texans were asking for God's comfort, for God's guidance, and for God's healing for all those who are suffering. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives were helping in the investigation, which was being led by the Texas Rangers. The shooting unfolded on the 8th anniversary of the attack in 2009 on Fort Hood in Texas, when an Army psychiatrist, Marj. Nadal Malik Hassan, killed 13 people in one of the deadliest mass shootings at an American military base. Major Hassan carried out his attack in an attempt to wage jihad on American military personnel. The death toll on Sunday also exceeded the number killed in 1966 by a student at the University of Texas at Austin, Charles Whitman, who opened fire from the school's clock tower in a day of violence that ultimately killed 17. It also exceeded the number killed during a rampage at a restaurant in Killeen in 1991, in which a gunman fatally shot 23 people and then took his own life. And the shooting on Sunday occurred more than 2 years after Dylan S. Roof opened fire at Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, in June 2015, killing 9 people, including the pastor. The motive in that attack was racial hatred. Mr. Roof, a white supremacist, plotted an assault on a black congregation, but no motive has been established by the authorities in the shooting in Sutherland Springs. The First Baptist Church is predominantly white, and Mr. Kelly is white. The authorities said Mr. Kelly used an Ruger AR-15 variant, a knockoff of the standard service rifle carried by the American military for roughly half a century. Location of the First Baptist Church. Almost all AR-15 variants legally sold in the United States fire only semi-automatically, and they were covered by the federal assault weapons ban that went into effect in 1994. Since the ban expired in 2004, the weapons have been legal to sell or possess in much of the United States, and sales of AR-15s have surged. Ruger's AR-15s made for civilian markets sell for about $500 to $900, depending on the model. Mr. Kelly grew up in New Braunfels, in his parents' nearly $1 million home, and was married in 2014. He had been married at least once before and was sued for divorce in 2012 in New Mexico. The same year he was court-martialed on charges of assaulting his wife and child. Why he chose to attack a church 30 miles away from his home is one of the questions that remained unanswered. Sutherland Springs in Wilson County is about 34 miles east of downtown San Antonio, in a slow-paced region where church-going is a common part of the Sunday routine. The church marquee on Sunday needed updating from last week, reading, "Join Us, Fall Fest, October 31st, 6 to 8 p.m. The unincorporated community has a population that numbers in the low hundreds. The 2000 census was 362, according to the Texas State Historical Association. The preliminary death toll would amount to about 7% of that population." Joseph Silver, 49, who lives about 5 miles northeast of Sutherland Springs, described Sutherland Springs as a one-blinking light town. 2 women in Sutherland Springs, Texas, embraced after the deadly shooting in the tiny community. Darren Abbott, Associated Press. "Everybody is pretty grief-stricken," Mr. Silver said. "Everyone's worried." On Sunday night, a few minutes down a pitch-black road, victims' families gathered at another house of worship, the River Oaks Church. Its parking lot was full of about 50 large trucks, and parents walked into the building holding the children's hands. The police kept tight control over the scene, refusing to allow any reporters to enter. One man in a cowboy hat was also turned away. They said they're gathering to inform the families, but they'll only let immediate family in, only if you have a wristband, he said. A short while later, a young man rushed out to his truck, visibly upset, and raced away. The First Baptist Church, the scene of the shooting, was also sealed off, with yellow police line tape posted around the church grounds. First Baptist is a little church, albeit a tech-savvy one. The service at the church last Sunday was posted on YouTube, one of several posted there. Videos posted online show lyrics to the hymns appearing on television screens, with parishioners playing electric guitars and a sign language interpreter translating the songs. The video of last Sunday's service begins with a rendition of a song called "Happiness is the Lord." Then the pastor, Frank Pomeroy, told his parishioners, 20 to 30 were visible in the video, to walk around the room and shake somebody's hand, tell them it's good to see them in God's house this morning, Pastor Pomeroy said. 10,292,017 Proverbs chapter 3 You don't need training wheels, you need Christ. Video by First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs, Texas. Correction, November 5, 2017. An earlier version of this article misspelled the surname of a Wilson County Commissioner. He is Albert Games Jr., not Gamaz. David Montgomery reported from Sutherland Springs, Christopher Mele from New York, and Manny Fernandez from Houston. Reporting was contributed by Susan Anatagasti and Shannon Sims from Sutherland Springs, Natalie Kittreff from New Braunfels, Tex. Maggie Astor, Christina Karen, Matthew Haag, Inemona Harticolis and William K. Rashbaum from New York, Adam Goldman from Washington, John Ismay from Arlington, Virginia, Julie Hirschfield Davis from Tokyo, C.J. Chivers and Thomas Gibbons Neff. Jack Begg contributed research. A version of this article appears in print on November 6, 2017, on page A1 of the New York edition with the headline Armed for War, Gunman Killed 26 in Attack on Rural Texas. Church.